Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and appreciate your time attending this session on cloud and hybrid workload protection using Azure Defender. In this session, we will look into Azure Defender capabilities and especially focus on the new hybrid multi-cloud support that Azure Defender brings in. I will also be demonstrating at least one or maybe two hybrid scenarios. So hopefully I can make up some time for that. My name is Sangram. I am an independent cloud architect and also a technology advisor for a couple of startups. And I mostly work with enterprises, SMEs, and obviously startups, making cloud and other emerging technologies work for them. I have been multi-cloud certified since 2013 and have been doing Azure training since 2013. During these years, I've also had the opportunity to publish a book and be involved in a few of these webinars and conferences and workshops. So I hope you will have some of my experience and expertise to take away at the end of this session. Before we get into Azure Security Center and more so focus on Azure Defender, let's talk a bit about threat. Organizations are able to innovate and launch faster today due to the capabilities that cloud provides. However, this faster pace means rapidly changing environments, infrastructure, devices, users, etc. Right? This obviously makes businesses agile and achieve them or help them achieve faster time to market. However, this also brings in various challenges, one of them being security, which is what we're focusing on. Security Operations Centers, or SOCs as we call them, typically have their hands full trying to ensure these rapidly changing technology landscapes are monitored, protected, remediated, they follow best practices, they meet compliance and governance requirements, right? And many more. And one of the challenges around this is to have a unified visibility across all your infrastructure, all your resources, all your users, devices. And given today's multi-cloud adoption, hybrid, being one of the popular trends, this becomes a big challenge to kind of have an overall visibility across everything that you own, that an organization owns. With security threats getting increasingly sophisticated, right? Attackers are able to target a wider attack surface area. They are able to implement very smart evasive maneuvers, right? All of this result in the SOCs being overwhelmed. To add to this complexity, we now have DevOps and GitOps, which is again, being widely adopted, and hence, security becomes one of the important, areas that any organization want to properly address. You obviously cannot resolve or fix security once and for all, but you want to ensure that you have a very comprehensive and unified view of everything that your organization owns across all clouds, across on-prem, across everything that you use for your business. So to help you with this, Microsoft's integration-based unified threat protection suite is what is available. It consists of the Azure Sentinel. We do have a session on this, so do watch out for that. Azure Sentinel is the cloud-native CM tool, or security information and event management tool. And Microsoft Defender is the XDR, or extended detection and response tool. So these two together provide you the Microsoft Threat Protection Suite. Now, Microsoft Defender is made up of Microsoft 365 Defender, which is for your email, documents, identity, applications, endpoint, etc. And Azure Defender, which also provides XDR capabilities, but this is for infrastructure, multi-cloud platforms, IoT, databases, containers, etc. Right? So we will focus on the Azure Defender capabilities. So I just wanted to quickly kind of show you where we are in terms of in the overall threat management suite. I want to show you that this is where we are going to focus on. This is what we're going to talk about. But then there is a comprehensive unified solution called the threat protection suite, which includes Sentinel and Defender. Defender is again into two different parts: 365 Defender and Azure Defender. There's a lot of confusion around this because Microsoft products have gone through a lot of revamp. And one of the common questions that I get often is, where does Azure Defender sit in all of this? And this is the latest snapshot of where the whole Azure Defender fits into the threat protection solution. Right. So with this introduction, let's quickly take a look at Azure Security Center, which integrates with Azure Defender to provide you the cloud and hybrid workload protection platform. Azure Security Center is a unified security management system, obviously. So focus is on the word unified. And it provides two broad capabilities or solutions. One is cloud security posture management, where you continuously monitor and improve the security posture of your environment, right? Now, if you combine Azure Defender to it, that's where the second part comes in, which is the cloud workload protection or cloud workload threat protection, if you want to call it. This requires Azure Defender, which is a paid solution, and you've got a 30-day trial available if you want to try it out. And this is what provides you threat protection for your machines, whether they are on-prem or on other cloud platforms. Some other notable capabilities of Azure Security Center include automated responses that I want to highlight here to recommendations and threats. So you're able to create automated remediation workflows, which leverage ARM templates and logic apps, right? And you are able to kind of write workflows that will be executed when there is a potential threat. The cloud workload protection platform is backed by Microsoft's threat protection capabilities. And this includes signals from trillions of devices, customized threat intelligence, capability to provide you prioritized alerts according to your specific environment, right? So you can ignore the chatter. All of this capability is heavily driven by machine learning and artificial intelligence. So you get to focus on alerts and incidents that matter to you, and we prioritize them so that you, on your dashboard, you see which ones need to be addressed first. Not to mention, not to forget to mention, I should say, is the 3,500 plus security team and all other areas that Microsoft is invested in terms of security. All of that backend knowledge, all of that experience that Microsoft has gained over the years, they all are provided to you through these security solutions. So you leverage that, and there is a team that is constantly looking at newer threats. They're updating the database. So your protection is up to date. You don't have to invest in ensuring that the backend is up to date. Security Center has two modes. One that's called as Azure Defender Off. The other one is the Azure Defender On. The Azure Defender Off is nothing but the Azure Security Center free tier, which provides continuous monitoring and reporting of the security posture of Azure resources only. It does not support hybrid. It provides recommendations to improve the posture, and they're based on a concept called Azure policies. You may have heard about them. Azure Security Benchmark is the policy initiative, which is the default one that gets applied to your subscription when you enable or when you launch Azure Security Center for the first time. This benchmark or this policy initiative, which is a collection of policies, is Microsoft authored Azure specific set of guidelines for security and compliance. They are also based on the best practices of some of the common compliance frameworks. We also have more regulatory standards and compliance frameworks available, which you can use, but then that again requires that you have access to Azure Defender subscription. To help you implement the recommendations, we also include steps. So steps are also included in the recommendations. They will help you implement. Or so if you don't know how to implement a security remediation, that's not a problem. We give you a step-by-step process. Sometimes we also give you quick fix buttons that you can click to quickly implement a security recommendation. Also part of the free tier is your Azure Secure Score, which is the foundation for the security posture management. Let's quickly take a look at this from the dashboard. So this is what your security center looks like. And this is the secure score that I was talking about. Right, so you can complete some of the recommendations based on the subscription in question and improve your security score. Right, so you can see there are quite a few recommendations here, and some of these recommendations, for example, let's say we pick one of this. These are called recommendations. They're based on policies, and the policies are something that you can obviously customize. But again, for custom policies and a lot of the added advanced capabilities, you will require the Azure Defender license. But we give you the remediation steps. Okay, there is also a quick fix logic that you can implement. So it's very easy for anyone to implement these recommendations, even if they don't know what needs to be done. They are guided to implement these recommendations. All right, so that's a quick about what you have when you do not have Azure Defender enabled. And this is where you can quickly go and select your subscription under pricing and settings and turn on Azure Defender. This obviously is a chargeable solution, and depending on what Azure Defender supports, there's a separate pricing for every resource that you protect using Azure Defender. And this is your pricing. This is a way to quickly turn off Azure Defender for some of those resources that you don't want to enable Defender for, right? So here, this is where you make the changes and subscribe to the Azure Defender plan. We'll come back to this when I want to show you more. All right, so that's a bit about Azure Security Center. Now, Azure Defender, which is part of the Microsoft Threat Protection Suite, is what provides you the cloud workload protection platform. And like I was saying earlier, it is backed by Microsoft's threat protection capabilities, right? Enabling Azure Defender provides you with a lot of additional capabilities like hybrid support, which is what I want to focus on. Right, so to implement hybrid support, you will most likely be using something called as an Azure Arc. This is a solution that provides a consistent, simplified management platform for multi-cloud and on-prem scenarios. And this is used when you have to protect servers and databases. Okay, Azure Defender combined with Azure Arc also supports Kubernetes installations. Okay, so we'll get there. I'll quickly show you some of the things that you can do, but just keep in mind that Azure Arc is the recommended approach when it comes to protecting hybrid workloads. Apart from this, as I was mentioning, you can create custom policies and initiatives. You can select certain regulatory standards that apply to your business. You can You can be subscribed to alerts and incidents. I'll talk a bit more about it later on, but that's an important one. Every time there is a security threat, you are alerted, there is an alert created, and you have various drill down options available to understand more about the alert and take action. We are also able to correlate alerts into incidents. So we'll talk more about it in the subsequent slides. Right. Vulnerability scanning. This is available for virtual machines and containers. So we are able to provide you vulnerability scanning for container images. However, this is only for Azure Container Registry as of now. And this uses a solution called Qualys. That's the one that is popularly used when it comes to vulnerability scanning. We also provide you vulnerability scanning for SQL databases, Azure SQL databases. Apart from this, you've got Azure native threat protection for Azure Resource Manager, which is in preview, Azure DNS, which is also in preview, right? You've got protection solutions for network layer, which we'll talk about, right? Adaptive network hardening. We also have protection for Azure Key Vault, where you are able to be notified when there is, let's say, for example, some sort of access to Key Vault artifacts like encryption keys or certificates or secrets, database connection strings or something like that from a different source or from an IP address that is in the block list and so on, right? So I'll talk more about it. But we do have Azure Pass protection as part of Azure Defender as well. And as I was mentioning earlier, obviously we have the automated incident response capability where you are able to define workflows that can be executed when there is a security incident. So these are some of the high-level capabilities that you have with Azure Defender. Apart from this, we also have features like just-in-time access to virtual machines, which I'll talk a bit about. Adaptive application control, right? Network maps, file integrity monitoring. We'll talk a bit more about this in the coming slides. But this is a complete list of features that you get on enabling Azure Defender. Okay, so Azure Defender is your cloud protection platform. Comes with a ton of capabilities and more getting added as and when the next releases come in. I get this question a lot. It's expensive. Having implemented this for a few clients, I understand this can get expensive. But believe me, when I tell you that investment is worth, given today's scenario of work from home, you have the number of employees working from home has increased exponentially, right? 1,000 times for many companies. And your entire attack surface area and users and credentials and devices that are exposed to threats has just blown because of the current situation. And this investment literally pays off when you talk about all these unknown variables, unknown environments from which your data could be accessed, your applications could be accessed, from where you might have security threats. So with that, considering that we're focusing on protection of our workloads, we'll start off with the first sections. I've categorized the protection part into servers, databases, containers. These are three most popular security asks. And obviously, there's a quick slide on protecting your Azure Pass resources as well. Post which, like I said, I have time for at least one or maybe two hybrid scenario demos. So when we talk about protecting servers, here I am talking about physical machines or virtual machines, and they can be both Windows and Linux. However, there are obviously certain scenarios like Microsoft Defender for endpoint that only supports Windows as of now. We are able to support both cloud as well as hybrid resources. When I say hybrid, the machines or the servers that you want to protect can be on-prem, can be on your existing co-location data center. It can be on AWS. It can be on Google Cloud, right? Or it can be on any other cloud, even though we'll get there in the next set of slides. Even though we don't have ready-made connectors for them, you can actually onboard servers, virtual machines that are running anywhere, as long as they're running the supported set of operating systems, right? That's the that's a part. Couple of things that I want to highlight here is vulnerability scanning. We are able to scan your virtual machines to see if they have a vulnerability scanning solution installed. Qualys is what is used here for vulnerability scanning, and integrated vulnerability scanning, that is assessment solution powered by Qualys. And we are able to give you recommendation if that is not installed. So you can apply some quick fix and install those solutions in your virtual machines. You can also bring your own license if you want. You can bring in Qualys or Rapid7 as one of the solutions. So again, protecting servers supports hybrid scenario. That's the reason I've kind of made those images there to show you what protects what. For hybrid scenarios, the recommended approach to onboard your virtual machines or servers is obviously Azure Arc, but you can also use agent-based mechanism to onboard non-Azure virtual machines, and that requires log analytics, workspace and agents around that and all of that. This is really a game changer, if you ask me. The fact that we are able to provide a unified security view across your environments, and we're not just focusing on Azure. It can be AWS or GCP or anything else. Similarly, we've got another capability that I want to talk about quickly, and that is just-in-time access. You do not want, one of the security recommendations is that you do not want to have your management ports open all the time and from everywhere, right? So just-in-time access provides you with a capability of turning on or enabling management ports only when it is required. So that's called JIT, or just-in-time access. You lock down the inbound traffic to your VMs, hence reducing your attack surface area or reducing the exposure, okay? And you use a button to enable these ports only when there is a requirement. And you are able to select the ports that you want to open. You are able to define the timelines during which the connection is open. So these are some capabilities that come with just-in-time access. Next, you've got file integrity monitoring. Again, all of these are based on security hardening and best practices that we know of. It's just that when you have a lot of resources and they're spread across cloud and hybrid, ensuring that all of them follow this becomes very difficult in terms of tracking, right? Detection and all of that. So file integrity monitoring is all about ensuring that important files do not change. A simple example can be your database configuration file. Let's say you're running MySQL and you don't want the my.cnf file to change. So you define your own rules, and whenever there is a change to that file, you are, we monitor, and obviously you are notified about it, right? So file integrity monitoring is all about ensuring that your important files, registry files, it can be Linux files, Windows files, they do not change, or at least you're notified when they change. It's not that it can, like literally block the change, but total changes that have occurred, breakdown of the changes, these are things that you can track. Then you've got adaptive network hardening. This is on the lines of helping you improve your network security posture. Okay, and what we basically focus here is on network security groups. So we look at your network security group rules. We look at your virtual machines that use them, and we provide you unhealthy resources that have recommendations. Unhealthy resource is nothing but a VM that has recommendations around hardening your network. Maybe you have opened port 22 and 3389 from anywhere, 0000/0, right? Something like that. So you can again define rules and harden your network using adaptive network hardening. Docker host hardening is again something that is very interesting, and this is based on the CIS Docker benchmark, and we are able to give you recommendations based on based on changes to your Docker host. Containers are one of the most targeted infrastructures in today. Kubernetes clusters, Docker hosts, insecure Docker APIs, too exposed Docker APIs, right? Or containers that provide you elevated access, right? These are loopholes that attackers look for when they want to compromise your systems. So Docker host hardening is a protection solution around that. Again, like I said, this is based on the CIS Docker benchmark, and it will alert you if your containers don't satisfy some of the controls that are part of the CIS Docker benchmark, and they will be visible under Security Center's recommendation page. Docker host hardening is obviously supported only for Docker as of now. There are some versions of Docker that it supports, and obviously this is to monitor unmanaged containers. Okay, if you have managed containers using Kubernetes, we'll obviously look into Azure Defender for Kubernetes, right? And Microsoft Defender for endpoint is obviously for your endpoint machines. Again, remember that it only supports Windows as of now. Similarly, around protecting databases, we support Azure SQL, SQL on Azure virtual machines, Azure SQL managed instances, Azure Synapse Analytics, which was previously called Data Warehouse, and obviously Azure Arc enabled SQL Server. So for hybrid scenarios, we'll obviously end up using this, which is the Azure Arc. Okay, so your SQL Server can be on-prem or can be on a different cloud, and if you connect it through Azure Arc, you will be able to manage it using Azure Defender. Let's quickly take a look at some of these capabilities. So this is Azure Defender, a quick overview of your Azure Defender coverage. I have created a few resources so as to show you in a much more realistic view as to how this works. These are some of the advanced protection capabilities that we were talking about. And this is your overall Azure Defender coverage, the number of servers you have, Kubernetes clusters, container registries, and so on. Right? And let's say you want to talk about SQL databases, which is what we were referring to here. If you go to a SQL database, you obviously should have Azure Defender for SQL enabled, and if you do, you will find something like this. You can see all the recommendations in the Security Center itself. Or at the server level, we have some of these capabilities. Okay, so you can see the recommendations here itself. These are some of the recommendations that we provide. And it clearly says that Azure Defender for SQL is enabled at the subscription level. Okay, so that's a bit about where you can find security related settings for your databases. This is your Sql Vulnerability Assessment. Okay, and again, you will get recommendations if you're not following some of the recommended approaches to, and what's the benchmark that particular control or the recommendation applies to, what's the level of severity, so, and what's the category of the finding. All of these details are provided to you, and you can click on one of them and you get more details. And I'm sorry, my Firefox crashed. So you get the idea, right? So we provide you a very step-by-step approach to making sure that your resources are protected no matter where they are running. Okay, so this is a bit about, and then you click on the database. You can run additional vulnerability assessment scans as well. All right, with the interest of time, I'll just move on to the next set of decks. Containers are very popular, and obviously you'd be running containers in one of the two approaches. Either you are running containers standalone in Docker hosts, or maybe you're managing containers using a container orchestration platform like Kubernetes, right? So whatever your container implementation approach is, we provide you protection across resource types such as Kubernetes clusters, container hosts, and container registries. Okay, container registries, obviously we support ACR for now, and we are able to do vulnerability assessment on the images that you upload to ACR or Azure Container Registry. This is again driven by Qualys. That's the, you don't have to install Qualys. It's all integrated very seamlessly in the backend. So Azure Defender for Kubernetes, for example, provides you continuous monitoring capabilities, runtime protection for your containers, workload protection, best practices using Kubernetes admission control, and obviously we support Kubernetes running on Azure and Kubernetes that is running elsewhere, which is through Azure Arc. So Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes clusters are obviously how you protect your hybrid Kubernetes clusters or Kubernetes clusters running outside of Azure. So Azure Kubernetes Service on Azure Stack, Kubernetes in general, there is obviously a list of versions that are supported. AKS Engine, Red Hat OpenShift, these are some supported Kubernetes distributions for Azure Defender for Kubernetes. So Defender for Kubernetes, Azure Arc enabled clusters, container registries, and Docker host. That's your entire portfolio of what kind of container deployments can we protect. And finally, yes, we obviously protect Azure PaaS resources, right? And some of the services that are covered as part of this includes app service, storage accounts, key vault, and obviously your network. We also have certain services in preview like DNS and resource manager. Some of the use cases that you can think of when it comes to protecting these resources could be, let's say, for example, storage accounts, right? Suspicious access patterns. For example, someone accessed a document, right? Successfully accessed a document, maybe by providing all the credentials, but from a Tor node. The Tor is the onion ring, and maybe someone is trying to mask the location where he or she is coming in from, and they have somehow gotten access to leaked credentials, and they are able to access your data, right? Now, it is obviously notified as an alert to you, and the alert comes up in security alerts. You are free to say, I ignore this because it was me, or you can obviously think of it as a potential threat and take remediation actions. Similarly, suspicious activities like data extraction. Maybe there is a lot of data extraction going on. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you have noticed this, but it's not exactly related to storage account in its typical sense. But you might have noticed that when you delete a lot of files from your OneDrive, you have emails and notifications coming in saying there is a bulk delete, that happened, right? So that's called a suspicious activity. Someone is trying to extract a lot of data, or someone is doing a lot of get requests, a lot of list requests, right? Or download requests and all of that. It's also possible that when you have content that is being stored in an object storage solution that is then eventually used by your application and all, you don't want malicious content available within your application, or somehow your application reading those malicious content or downloading those malicious content to your application servers and all of that. So if someone uploads malicious content, we also have the Azure storage, the Azure Defender for Azure storage accounts, giving you protection for potential malware files, and they do this based on hash reputation, okay, analysis, or hosting of phishing content and things like that. So these are some examples of protecting Azure storage account and its contents like blobs. Similarly, key vault. Let's assume that you have a secret, which is a database connection string or a API token, and there is an unusual access. Someone got the URL and they're trying to open it, maybe in a different browser, maybe from a different location. Other kind of protection, for example, is for Azure App Services, threats that are based on the MITRE framework, dangling DNS detection. These are some examples of protections that you can get using Azure Defender for PaaS. Again, remember that all of this is part of Azure Defender, so you need the Azure Defender enabled for these services. So a final summary of what you can do with Azure Defender, right? So categorized into Azure and non-Azure, or hybrid multi-cloud, whatever you want to call it. And you've got Azure Defender for obviously Azure servers, app services, SQL databases, SQL Server running on machines, right? Storage, Kubernetes, and I guess we'll have more services come under the protection for Defender. And then on the hybrid part, you have support for AWS and GCP as connectors. And you can also add non-Azure VMs using the agent-based approach. The recommended approach is obviously to add servers using Azure Arc. Doesn't matter where your servers are, on-prem, Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, or elsewhere, you will be able to leverage Azure Arc capabilities and monitor your resources, mostly servers, okay? When I talk about hybrid or multi-cloud, currently the scope is servers, physical servers or virtual machines, and SQL and databases. SQL, I've heard of Postgres, but I haven't had the chance to really evaluate what's possible and what's not. So I'll just stick to servers, Windows and Linux, obviously supported operating systems only. For example, Azure Arc currently supports CentOS 7 only, and Ubuntu up to 18 and not 20, and similar. So there is a list of supported operating systems, but Azure Arc is one of the recommended approaches to onboarding non-Azure, workloads like servers or Kubernetes clusters or databases. Right. So that's a quick snapshot. Again, just to summarize. This is your overall Azure Defender capability as of now. Before I get on to the demonstrations, a quick slide on alerts. And in fact, I want to show you how alerts work. Just go to Security Center. And this is your security alerts. There's one alert here. And this was a blob that was accessed from a Tor exit node. You click on this, you get more details about the alert. Is it still active? What is the severity? What is the activity time? Affected resources, right? And what's the at what stage is it in the cyber kill chain? So this thing here is the cyber kill chain. We evaluate alerts and we show you where the alert stands in terms of the cyber kill chain. This also helps you understand, the security posture, and you can take full details about the alert. What are the affected Azure resources? What's the geolocation, right? Network connection. What was the source IP address? So building a solution like this will take you a lot of time and a lot of investment, in having access to a solution like this. And it's very easy to kind of, quickly understand where you stand in terms of your security posture, and also protect your resources. Look at your alerts specifically, take action if required, or ignore them, whatever, and we give you suggestions on how you can prevent these attacks in the future. How will you currently mitigate the threat, right? Define automated responses to threats like this in the future, right? Or you can decide to suppress similar alerts as well. So that's a bit about alerts. Again, remember, alerts are available across your hybrid setup, of course, but alerts are notifications to potential threats. Security Center does the prioritization and will correlate alerts into something called as a security incident. And this correlation is done using a concept or technology, you may say, called as cloud smart alert correlation. And we take all these low fidelity signals and create security incidents out of them. Okay. Another example can be brute force attack. Someone is constantly trying to get access to your virtual machine. Okay. Or a SQL injection. These are certain additional kinds of alerts that you might see. Too many alerts related to a certain resource could correlate into incident. The incident could be a brute force attack incident. You can look at some sample alerts by clicking on this, and this is a quick way to create some sample alerts. I just want to quickly show you, because I again get this question a lot during my security trainings. It's very difficult to create these alerts. I had to create this last night to make sure that this alert is visible here. It's not like real time. So if you want to quickly have access to a set of sample alerts to see how they look like, this is a very easy way to do that. And then you will have some more examples of similar alerts that you can click and see, just to have an idea on how these alerts appear and what kind of alerts they are, and things like that. Severity, and what step in the cyber kill chain are they, or do they belong to, and things like that. So with that, I have the last 15 minutes, and I think I should be able to at least do one of the demonstrations. I will show you how to add a non-Azure VM. See, working with Azure Defender with Azure resources is pretty easy. And I think you'll find a good number of resources around that. Considering that we are focusing on the hybrid approach a bit more, I wanted to show you how you can use the Azure Arc method to add a non-Azure VM. Okay, I already have an Azure VM added. So here's a list of sample VMs. Okay, do try this out, and you can see what is the MITRE attack tactics, what stage of the cyber kill chain it belongs to. So if I click on this, right, so it's here in next filtration. All right, so with that, off to the demo here, where I want to show you. So by the way, let me go to inventory first. Okay, this is my entire inventory of servers, and you can see there is a server here called Ubuntu Server 1. This is my server that is through Azure Arc. Currently, it's unmonitored. This is a machine that is running in DigitalOcean. Okay, I do have recommendations already for this. And unavailable assessments, current state of monitoring is not monitored, and all of that. So this is what I meant by adding non-Azure VMs. So we'll go ahead and kind of take a look at that. This is a bit more detailed. It appears as if it's a resource within your Azure portal. Okay, that's how seamless the integration is. Okay, to begin with, you will have to go to Azure Arc for servers and click on Add. You know what? I'll do this from inside the machine where I want to kind of, what I want to add here, because that way running the scripts will be easy. So this is a remote machine that I have. It's a Windows machine. This is a machine that runs SQL Server and Windows Server. So let's go ahead and look at the process. I am adding a single server for now, but if you have multiple servers to add, you can always use a more scripted approach for that. I say generate the script, and it will ask you to ensure a few things. Then you will define your resource details and your operating system, your subscription, resource group, which region you want to keep this in, and add some tags. So I'll say data center is, so this is a Oracle Cloud machine, by the way. So it's not running on Azure. I'm not using any simulations. I'm actually keeping these servers outside of Azure to show you that it in fact works, right? And this Oracle Cloud is based out of the Hyderabad data center. So I'll just add that, and then download and run the script, right? So this is the script that I need to run. Now, depending on the current state of your updates and all, it is possible that some of the partial commands may not run, and you might be asked to update and all of that. So if you're doing it and partial commands don't run, or if you have some issues, obviously you'll have to fix those before they run successfully. So you need to go to Microsoft.com device login. I will have a copy issue because I'm running a Mac. I have had that in the past, so I will just type it manually. I hope that's an S and a B. So you can see successfully onboarded resource to Azure, right? All right, let's look at servers. Okay, so that's your Oracle Cloud machine connected or added to Azure using Azure Arc. The next thing that you need to do, obviously, is to onboard this to Azure Security Center, right? But this is usually the approach. Using Azure Arc, you can onboard non-Azure VMs and make them part of your Azure and manage them, manage them centrally. Go to security, okay, and it says Azure Defender for Servers is on. So obviously this will reflect in Azure Security Center, right? So that's a bit about how you add a non-Azure VM. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I'll quickly show you how you can add AWS as well. It shouldn't take long. There are prerequisites like having AWS config and AWS Security Hub enabled. You need an account that has the right permissions and all of that, and IAM role in AWS. And once you have all of the prerequisites in place, you obviously need the hybrid compute provider and the guest management provider for your subscription. And then I can say this is AWS. This is my AWS Hotmail account, so I'll just write like this. So the subscription that not all subscriptions will support. For example, some of these complimentary subscriptions that you get as part of your training, right? Many of you have attended that. That does not work. And I'll use some credentials I already have. So here you need the AWS access key and secret key. That's not the recommended approach. The recommended approach is to assume a role. But for now, I think this is okay. So we'll use this. The resource group, I don't have one. I'll create one. Let's call it hybrid. Right? And you need some service principals in Azure Active Directory created and all of that. But I just want to show you how easy it is. All you need here is a service principal with a client ID and secret. And this you can do from your Azure Active Directory. Okay, we can leave the last 5 minutes for Q&As. I'm pretty close. But yeah, it's a lot to kind of cover. So you need to go to app registrations, right? And you need to create a registration. This one needs to be added to the subscription, obviously. You need some secrets. Right, so this is your service principal. And that's your app. That's it. The process of integrating with Azure Arc is seamlessly taken care in the backend for you. You don't have to separately create any AWS, any Azure Arc connection and all of that. It's as easy as this. And then you will start seeing your AWS account in Security Center, and you are also able to get all the details from the AWS Security Hub coming into Security Center now, and more. I'm just mentioning very small part of it, but if you feel this is interesting, you can always go ahead and try this out yourself. Just make sure you have a subscription like pay-as-you-go that has the necessary providers enabled. And not all subscriptions really support this connector. And obviously, you need Azure Defender, right? So with that, we took a look at this, how to add an AWS account. I'm happy that I'm able to show you both the demonstrations. We can look at the Q&As.